What's up, guys? Fresh off the Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight. First of all, it was a phenomenal fight. Shout out to everyone that was here with us on the live commentary. Man, we had a great time. The fight was definitely worth it, and definitely one of the best fights of the year, if not the best fight of the year. Very good fight. So much drama in the fight, back and forth in the fight. It was great. Definitely worth it. For starters, during one of the fights, the preliminary fights, Chris Eubank and Chris Eubank Sr. both arrived at the arena together. They pulled up in a Rolls Royce, stepped out together. It was a great moment. Everybody was excited. I know I was definitely excited to see them back together with all the drama that they had over the years. Not sure if this whole thing was just fake and they were just playing chess and stuff. I have no idea, but all I know is that they both showed up together and it was a great moment. And you could hear that everybody in the arena was excited for it. And it was just a great moment because without them two having a good relationship with each other, it just means like, all right, it's just a real rivalry type of thing because you're fighting for your dad and you're supposed to be fighting with your dad, and you guys don't even talk and have nothing but negative to say to about each other to the public. All right, so I'm glad that that happened. Now, as far as the actual fight, Chris Eubank Jr. won on points 116, 112 by all three judges. I actually scored it the exact same way. I think some of the fights or some of the rounds were definitely close, but it was an amazing fight. I mean, everything outside of knockdowns, there weren't no knockdowns in the fight, but there was a lot of back and forth, and the pacing had changed a few times in the fight. Okay. I think in the very early rounds, the first few rounds, Chris Eubank was controlling things with his jab. He was definitely being very consistent with the jab and trying to stay at range. Conor Benn came out very irky jerky, a lot of, you know, getting low, coming in, leaping in with left hooks, um, nice right crosses, right overhand rights, countering Eubank's jab. Whenever he was at range, it seemed like Connor got connected with some of the better shots in the first few rounds. So a lot of the movement was thrown off Chris. Chris was doing good with his jab, but wasn't really landing any major power shots. The left hook, he missed a lot with the left hook in the earlier rounds. Didn't really throw any uppercuts, uh, but he was very consistent with the jab and keeping distance. Um, Conor Benn had a great third round. All right, he started to connect with some big shots. Going into fourth though, it's back and forth. I gave Chris this fourth round, but again, it was a good fight up to that point. But after the fourth round, it seemed like Conor Benn started to slow down a little bit, and the amount of upper body movement that he was doing. He started to become a little bit more stationary, and he was coming like straight forward instead of getting low or anything. And he started to eat a lot of jabs and right hands. And Chris, by the end of the sixth round, was up big. Like he was landing the better shots between the two. Clearly was in control of the fight, and it seemed at some point it wouldn't be long before he get a stoppage because of the amount of punching and the fact that he was just schooling him boxing wise. But something happened in the seventh, and I believe that Chris Eubank Jr. changed the way he was fighting completely in the seventh round, where he started to just go straight to war with Conor Benn. I don't know if he wanted to do this. I don't know if he wanted to fight this way, but in the seventh round, Chris Eubank Jr. was just going to war with Conor Benn, which probably gave Conor Benn some of the advantages in this fight because Conor Benn started to land some of his best shots from round seven all the way to the end. Conor Benn was going to war, just trading with Chris Eubank Jr. And there were rounds there where even though Chris was more active, he was the bigger fighter, clearly bigger, pushing Conor Benn back, picking up the volume. The volume was definitely more. There was moments where Conor Benn was landing some big shots in between those punches that he was getting caught with. And then it got to a point in the last couple rounds where Conor Benn didn't even care. He was just swinging, and it doesn't matter how many punches Chris Eubank was landing. Conor Benn was just throwing punches right back at him, and it was just turning from 7 to 12. It just ended up being a crazy, crazy war between the two, and each round I felt like it just kept getting better all the way into the 12th. And it was just like, wow, there was a lot of wow moments because there was just so many bombs that was landed between the two and no one got knocked out, which is crazy. I gave Conor Ben two of those rounds of the in the last six. I gave him 2 and 3, and I gave him I think I gave him 8 and 10. I messed up the names here on a couple of the last rounds, but I know that Conor Ben, I think either won 4 or 5 rounds tops. I still think Chris won unanimously, in my opinion. But it was a very good fight with some close rounds and great moments throughout the fight. We just didn't get any knockdowns. There was a head clash somewhere in the middle rounds, maybe around the seventh, eighth round. Somewhere there was a head clash where Conor Ben kind of was throwing a punch and he swung his head and hit Chris Eubank on the outermost part of his eyebrow on the right side. Where it was a swelling, he was definitely bleeding. It was a pretty bad cut. Actually, I think the cut was probably a little bit over his eye too. But it is what it is. It was a great fight. I really, really enjoyed it. I think just everything was the energy, the dads being there. Though both dads were very respectful to each side, to each other, and both sides. I think it was dope. And that was that. Chris Eubank. What do I want? Well, I know he has a name. I know he's not going to be just. I would like for him to fight for a world title, but I think we're kind of past that with him. I think Chris is just chasing the money. If there is a rematch, uh, I think if he is to fight Conor Ben again, as much as I would like it to be even, I think it would be ridiculous for him to agree to another rehydration clause. You complaining about it when the fight was originally supposed to happen. You complaining about it last few months when the fight was made and agreed on. Um, I think agreeing to a rehydration clause again is just ridiculous if you're going to complain about it. As much as Conor Ben should have some kind of advantage going into this fight, at the end of the day, like, you know, the guy doesn't have to agree to your terms. He already agreed to a catch weight originally when the fight was supposed to happen. Um, so Chris Eubank, if he is going to take the agree on a rematch, I know there's some kind of clause in there, but if he agrees to another rehydration clause, that's going to be on him. I don't want to hear that he's weak or anything. I know he won, but it was still pretty close to me today. All right. Um, but I don't know who he would face. I think Hamza Shiraz already has a fight coming up, and I believe he's possibly moving up to 168. I like to see that fight. I would like to see him fight for a world title, Janabek, Carlos Adames, Arislana Lara. But I think those fights there, even though they're for a title, I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. is interested in those kind of opponents. He would have fought them already if he was. You know what I mean? So I think at this point, Chris Eubank, at his age, 35 years old, he's not going to be looking for any fights without it being a huge name for a lot of money. And that's what Conor Ben rematch kind of steps in, because after seeing that, who's going to be mad at wanting to see a rematch? All right. Conor Ben, what does he do? Well, he has a lot more options. He's younger. He did call out Chris Eubank in a rematch again, and he said that he's willing to go down to fight Mario Barrios for 147. He said Mario Barrios specifically. He didn't say Jaron Ennis. He didn't say Virgil Ortiz at 54. He didn't say anybody else but Mario Barrios for the WPC title at 47. That is what he said. He didn't name any other champions anywhere else. All right. He just said Mario Barrios. So he's looking to go down to 47. I do think right now that Barrios is probably the most beatable champion at 47. But at the same time, I wouldn't underestimate Barrios or the fact that he's going back down to 47. Even though I've said to you guys, Conor Ben is a smaller guy at 60, at 54, even at 47. He's not a big 47 pounder. So yeah, he could probably make the weight and cut down and stuff like that and fight there. But we got to remember, even though he probably can easily make weight. We got to remember that he has not fought the weight for 3 years now. And by the time he goes back down to 47, whether it's this year or not, it's going to be a long time before cutting down to that weight. You know what I mean? So even though you're small, even though you could probably make the weight, cutting down to the weight at 47 and not being drained after 3 years of not fighting there might be a lot for you. You know what I mean? It may be a lot for you. So it could be a dangerous fight. And even though Mario Barrios may seem beatable, especially coming after this performance, I mean, Conor took a lot of punishment in this fight. He took a lot of hits and didn't stop swinging. At no point did he look like he almost got knocked down or anything. He just took the punches and kept it going. Um, I just think that if he's going to go back to 147, that he has to be very careful at the weight simply because it's been 3 years and it'll be over 3 years by the time he gets back down there. All right, so I want to keep that in mind. But he has a lot of options. You know, I don't think there's any options at 60. I think the only option that makes sense at 54 is Virgil Ortiz Jr. Um, you know, or maybe even a Jamal Charlo or Jamel Charlo, I'm sorry. But there's not many options at 54. There's no options that's realistic for Conor Benn at 60 outside of Chris Eubank Jr. rematch. And at 47, there's a million options because you have all of the champions, and then you got all the big names there like Tio, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia. All those guys are still options as well. All right. So anyway, listen, great fight, probably fight of the year. You know, I have to look and think about what other fight. I know I'm not going to say it's fight of the year, but what I will say is that it's in the conversation of fight of the year because I don't remember every fight that happened this year. It's only April, but it was a great fight. I cannot wait to rewatch the fight. It's probably available on YouTube already because I know Turkey Al Sheikh normally has been dropping the fights on the undercard already as the fights were ending. He was dropping them on YouTube. So with that being said, fights will be available. I can't wait to watch it again. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Also, big week, big fight week. We got a lot of fights this week. Breakdowns will be done. So be on the lookout for those. I'll try to give you guys as many breakdowns to these upcoming fights this weekend as I can. And shout out to everyone that was on the live again. Appreciate you guys. Please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. And thank you for all of the support. You know, I haven't been that active, but I appreciate the support regardless. All right. Peace.